What's up, YouTube? Zero here, and today I have an amazing Charizard EX and Sylveon EX in Pokemon TCG Pocket. In this video, I'll go over the deck build that you can see on the left-hand side of the screen. I'll talk about each of the cards individually, and then I'll talk about why this deck works so well as a whole. It's a phenomenal deck. Do note that Charizard EX is the Steam Artillery Charizard from the Shining Revelry packs. There are a couple of Charizards in the game right now. But before I get into it, I do want to say if you do enjoy this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more Pokemon TCG content. I do a bunch of other video games, so feel free to check those out as well. Without further ado, let's talk about Charizard EX combined with Sylveon EX in Pokemon TCG Pocket. First, the star of the show, Charizard. This deck is pretty much going to live and die by Charizard EX. The name of the game is simple for this deck. Get through as many cards in your deck as possible so you can throw Charizard into that active slot, power Charizard up, and start attacking with Steam Artillery. That's it. That's the strategy. Pretty straightforward, but you gotta get Charizard into that active slot. So let's talk about Charizard. Has two moves. The first is going to be Stoke. So Stoke, you take 3 fire energy from your energy zone and attach it to this Pokemon. Stoke costs 1 fire energy. Then you have the bread and butter of this Charizard EX, Steam Artillery, for 5. That's right, 5, which is a ton. 5 energy, 3 of which are fire, 2 colorless. You deal 150 damage. So of course we just talked about Stoke. Stoke is going to be the way to lessen the blow of Steam Artillery. Typically what's going to happen is you're going to have Charizard in that active slot. You're going to have an energy or 2 on Charizard. You're going to Stoke, get your 3 energy, and then you're either going to attack or you're going to have to equip an energy the next turn and attack. Of course, it takes a few turns to get Charizard going. You're going to have 1 turn to equip 1 energy. Then you're going to have to Stoke. Then you're going to have to equip another energy, and then you can start attacking. Of course, after all this, you still would have had to evolve and utilize a turn for that. So it's going to be very rare that you can equip 5 energy onto this Charizard without stoking. It just is what it is. So you're going to have to at least spend 1 turn utilizing Stoke to get the 3 energy you need. So that's why you want to get Charizard into that active slot as quickly as possible. But once Steam Artillery is going, it's going to be very hard for your opponents to stop. Dealing 150 damage does deal a ton of damage to a lot of Pokemon. Doesn't one-hit KO everything, but it does one-hit KO a lot of Pokemon. So even though it does take a couple of turns to get going, once it's going, it's like rolling downhill. It's just going to continue building up momentum, and you're going to be dealing a lot of damage quickly to your opponent, which is why Steam Artillery Charizard is absolutely phenomenal. I mentioned it earlier, but Steam Artillery Charizard is going to be found in the Shining Revelry packs. Of course, to evolve into Steam Artillery Charizard, you're going to need a Charmander. The Charmander that I go with is actually the one from the Genetic Apex Charizard packs. And this Charmander, for 1 fire energy, deals 30 damage with Ember. However, you do discard a fire energy from this Pokemon. There's a reason why I go with this Charmander. There are a couple of Charmanders in the game right now. Now, you're going to discard an energy. And for a Pokemon, Charizard EX, that requires a lot of energy, you may think to yourself, well, I really don't want to discard energy because I have to build up so much on my Charizard EX. But like I said earlier, 99% of the time, you're going to have to Stoke. It's going to be very rare that you're going to be able to equip 5 energy onto Charizard without utilizing Stoke. So there's no need to just hoard energy on your Charmander. If you can get a little extra damage from Ember, then why not? It's going to help you out in the long run, especially because Steam Artillery cannot one-hit KO every Pokemon, so the extra damage is going to be nice on some of those beefier EX Pokemon. If you get Charizard EX in that active slot, you don't have any energy. You equip one energy, you stoke, and then the next turn you equip another energy and you're ready to attack. That's essentially how it's always going to be. You're pretty much always going to stoke with Charizard EX. No need to hold on to the energy when you have your Charmander, so you might as well deal the extra damage, which is why I like utilizing the Ember Charmander in this deck. Last but not least, as a part of this evolution line, you need something to evolve. Because I don't have Charmeleon, I'm utilizing Rare Candy instead, foregoing Charmeleon. So Rare Candy is absolutely awesome for every Stage 2 Pokemon. You have a Stage 2 in your deck, you're probably going to be running Rare Candy. Rare Candy, in terms of this deck, if you have Charmander on the playing field, and you've had Charmander there for at least one turn, if you have a Rare Candy in your hand and you have a Charizard EX in your hand, you get to evolve right into Charizard EX, skipping Charmeleon, making it so Charmeleon is not needed in this deck. So I skip Charmeleon so I can have the Flareon, to be honest, because Flareon's going to deal a little bit more damage, and I will talk about Flareon a little bit later in this video. But Rare Candy is just going to skip an evolution turn. So as long as you have Rare Candy and Charizard EX in your hand, you can evolve right into Charizard. Like I said, strategy of this deck, evolve into Charizard as quickly as possible, get it in the active slot, stoke, and start dealing damage, because Charizard EX is the damage dealer of this deck. And Rare Candy is going to be found in the Celestial Guardians packs. Next, I want to talk about Sylveon. Sylveon is an absolutely phenomenal card, and it only serves one purpose in this deck. I'm not running Psychic Energy in this deck. I'm only running Fire Energy. So Sylveon is not going to be able to attack. But Sylveon has an ability that's absolutely phenomenal, which is why you'll see Sylveon in a lot of decks that are not Psychic Energy, or Fairy Energy if you want to classify Sylveon as a fairy. But Sylveon EX has an ability called Happy Ribbon. Happy Ribbon is a professor's research as soon as you evolve Eevee into Sylveon EX. So Happy Ribbon, once during your turn, when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, you may draw 2 cards. So as soon as you evolve Eevee into Sylveon EX, you get to draw 2 cards. So that's pretty nice. It's expediting the card draw from your deck. And what's even nicer about that is it's not a supporter card, meaning you can evolve into Sylveon EX, draw 2 cards, and you can utilize one of your other supporter cards. It could be another Professor's Research, which if it's a Professor's Research, you get to draw 4 cards in that turn. So that's pretty nice to be able to do. The more cards you're able to get into your hand, the quicker you can implement your strategy. You can evolve into your Charizard EX and attack as quickly as possible. Again, the name of the game, get Charizard EX in the active slot and start attacking with Steam Artillery. So no need to talk about Sylveon EX's attack, because we're not going to be attacking with Sylveon in this deck due to only having Fire Energy. Sylveon EX is going to be found in the Eevee Grove packs, and so is the Eevee that I have in this deck as well. So the Eevee in this deck for 1 colorless energy is collect, draw a card. Pretty straightforward. We're trying to draw as many cards as possible to get to Charmander, Rare Candy, and then Charizard EX. So that's where we're going to be at in terms of this deck, continuing to draw cards as quickly as possible to get Charizard in that active slot. Now, one of the best supporter cards for Charizard is going to be Lily. Lily, you heal 60 damage from one of your stage 2 Pokemon. So in this case, we're healing up Charizard EX if it's taking any damage. This is going to allow Charizard to stay in that active slot longer and attack as much as possible, keeping Charizard alive throughout the battle so it can continue to deal damage and run through our opponent's Pokemon. Lily is going to be found in the Celestial Guardian Solgaleo packs. Couple of basic cards: Pokeball, draw a basic Pokemon from your deck to your hand, which is either going to be Eevee or Charmander. Professor's Research, you draw 2 cards, I mentioned that earlier. Last but not least, a couple of other supporter cards and Flareon. I'm going to take this brief moment to discuss why Flareon is in this deck. Well, for those of you who have been playing the game for a while, you already know about the Pokemon Oricorio Electric. Oricorio Electric is a pain, a thorn in everyone's side, but you have to make a deck preparing for Oricorio, or if you don't want to, you just chalk those games that you play against Oricorio. For those of you who don't know, Oricorio Electric has an ability. That ability is it does not take damage from attacks from EX Pokemon, which means that Charizard will not be able to damage Oricorio. So if Flareon was not in this deck, then Charmander would be our only opportunity to damage Oricorio. Of course, if you do put in a Charmeleon instead of Flareon, Charmeleon can as well. However, Oricorio has 70 HP, and a lot of decks that run Oricorio also run either Giant Cape, Pokemon Center Lady, which heals up 30 HP. Giant Cape gives the Pokemon it's attached to an extra 20 HP, or they're running both of them, which makes it a little bit difficult to defeat Oricorio. You have, say, Charmander in this deck. If Oricorio, which has 70 HP, has a Giant Cape on, it's now 90 HP, meaning Charmander has to hit it 3 times to KO it. Well, if your opponent runs Pokemon Center Lady that heals up 30 HP, it's going to be 4 turns. If they run 2 Pokemon Center Ladies, it's going to be 5 turns. And unfortunately, for Charmander only having 60 HP, Oricorio Electric deals 50 damage for 2 energy. So it's not going to be long before that Oricorio is able to defeat Charmander, before Charmander can defeat that Oricorio. So you can either do one of 2 things. Either you try to prepare for Oricorio. In this deck, I'm running a Flareon, or you just chalk it any game you're facing in Oricorio. Or you can hope that the strategy I mentioned with an Oricorio deck running Giant Cape and Pokemon Center Lady, your opponent just isn't running that. But I found that at least having a little bit of a failsafe can protect you a tiny bit from an Oricorio. So having one Flareon in here instead of a Charmeleon isn't going to kill the deck. You can utilize that on one of the Eevees, just in case you do see you're facing an electric deck and your opponent is running Oricorio. So that's just an option. It is a little bit of a fail-safe just in case, because this Flareon deals 110 damage. So you're going to be able to run through Oricorio regardless of if it has a Giant Cape on or not. You're going to one-hit KO as long as you have 3 energy on this Flareon. So Flareon, Flamethrower for 110 damage. So it's nice to have as a failsafe. Most battles you're not going to be playing Flareon. The goal is going to be get your 2 Sylveons onto the 2 Eevees so you can get every card necessary to power up Charizard. But if you do unfortunately run into an Oricorio, Flareon is going to be the option. This Flareon is going to be found in the Genetic Apex Charizard packs. Last but not least, 2 of my favorite cards in the game. I utilize them in most decks. Sabrina, the first one, found in the Genetic Apex Charizard packs. You switch out your opponent's active Pokemon to the bench. Your opponent does get to choose the new active Pokemon. However, you did see in a clip a little bit earlier myself against a Dialga, Bibarel, Licky deck. Now, not many people are running that deck. However, it does give a very good insight into why Sabrina is so good. All three of those Pokemon, Dialga, Licky, and Bibarel, have insanely high retreat costs. So, if I am utilizing Sabrina, I force my opponent's Dialga to the bench, and I force my opponent to put one of those two Pokemon, Licky or Bibarel, in the active slot. They both have a 4 retreat cost, which is insanely high. So I force my opponent to do that. They have to find a way to retreat that Pokemon. They have to find a way to attach energy really quickly. Or they just have to chalk that Pokemon, build up energy on their Pokemon on the bench. So Sabrina can really disrupt my opponent's strategy. It can really save damage from my Pokemon that are in that active slot, which is why I love Sabrina so much. Really good at disrupting opponent's strategies. So there's always a good time to play Sabrina. Of course, there are some decks that kind of neutralize Sabrina in your Ultra Beast decks because of Celesteela and Buzzwole. That doesn't mean Sabrina is useless, because you can still utilize it if maybe there's a Pokemon you want to attack. It's also a nice way to avoid Pokemon tools, because I don't have Guzma in this deck. So if my opponent has a Poison Barb or Rocky Helm on their active Pokemon, I can utilize Sabrina to knock them back to the bench and handle a Pokemon that doesn't have a Pokemon tool. So there are a lot of options to utilize Sabrina. It's an absolutely great way to avoid Pokemon tools, disrupt your opponent's strategy. A lot of good uses. I absolutely love Sabrina. I have one Cyrus. Of course, I have one Flareon, so I'm filling out the deck with one more card. Cyrus is still a phenomenal card, especially in this deck. As I mentioned earlier, Charizard EX is going to KO a lot of Pokemon. It's not going to KO all of them. And because I'm not going to KO all of them, that's going to give my opponents an opportunity to retreat some of their Pokemon to the bench. Cyrus isn't going to allow them to do it. I'd rather finish off a weakened Pokemon. There are also certain Pokemon in the game that do deal damage to themselves, which could also cause your opponent to have their Pokemon retreat. So there are certain Pokemon such as Flareon EX with its Combust that deals damage to itself. Giratina deals damage to itself after it attacks. So there are Pokemon that may end up on the bench that you may want to attack as Charizard EX that already have damage on it. So having one Cyrus here is a nice play to make sure your opponent can't hide any Pokemon on the bench. So I do like Cyrus in this deck. I like Cyrus in most decks. It's a very great card. And Cyrus is going to be found in the Spacetime Smackdown Palkia packs. This is an absolutely phenomenal deck. I love Charizard EX. I love both Charizard EXs in this game. Charizard Steam Artillery is absolutely phenomenal. Again, as soon as you get it going, which isn't too hard, you only need 1 energy for Stoke. And after you Stoke, Charizard is pretty much ready to roll. Charizard EX, pretty easy to get going. Once it gets going, there's no stopping it. The other Charizard in the game does have Crimson Storm, which deals more damage. Charizard Crimson Storm deals 200 damage, but you lose 2 fire energy in the process. So this Charizard, in terms of once it gets going, it just can't be stopped unless you have a Pokemon or a card that removes energy, which there are some in the game, but of course those require coin flips and may not necessarily work. So Charizard, this one, very hard to stop once it gets going. It's a phenomenal card, and I love this deck, especially because I love Charizard, who's one of my favorite Pokemon. So definitely check this deck out. Sylveon is great to expedite the card draw so you can get to Charizard EX and get those supporter cards that you need. And again, Flareon is here just in case those pesky Oricorio electric decks are facing you and you need to find a way to take them out pretty easily. Flareon is going to be here. So let me know in the comments section what you think of this deck. Have you utilized it? What do you think of Charizard EX Steam Artillery in general? Have you included Sylveon EX in pretty much all of your decks since you've unlocked it? It is a phenomenal card even in non-psychic decks because of its ability, so it's a great card to utilize. Let me know in the comment section if you've been utilizing it a lot. I know there's new packs coming out soon, the Lugia Ho-Oh decks, so I'm looking forward to that. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel for more Pokemon TCG content. If there are any Pokemon that you're interested in seeing decks for, just let me know in the comment section and I'll get them done. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, peace.